He spoke with an authority that could marshal battalions. His tone was deep, controlled, and held a palpable threat. "You will push yourself to the absolute limit, my queen, until you are utterly spent." The throne room itself felt like a tomb, illuminated solely by the wavering dance of torchlight against the cold marble surfaces. His regal circlet gleamed like a sharpened weapon under the flickering flames. I stood before him, clad in tattered silk, my defiance a fragile shield against his power. The imprint he'd left on me still burned fiercely against my throat, a mark I had sworn I would never bear. Not so long ago, I was a humble healer from the valley, chosen to provide succor to the king's warriors after the devastation of the Crimson War. Now I found myself his captive bride, bound by loyalty and an unbreakable pact to the Alpha King who had orchestrated the destruction of my people. Yet something profound shifted that night. He did not crush me. Instead, he revealed his own vulnerabilities. Each directive he issued sounded less like a sentence and more like a desperate confession. They claimed the Alpha King possessed no heart. They were mistaken. He had simply entombed it beneath a dominion forged from ruin, treachery, and a burden of desire he never sought. And I, who had come with the sole intention of ending him, found that somewhere amidst his veiled threats and the unexpected tenderness of his touch, the fiery resolve of vengeance began to yield to the sweet surrender of acceptance. Greetings, my cherished family. Welcome once more to our new family channel. May divine blessings be upon you all. I assure you, every narrative shared here is crafted to resonate deeply with your spirit and fulfill your soul's longing. This platform is dedicated to my beloved family, who find joy in narratives that are both brief and impactful. If this tale has touched you, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking our content, spreading the word, and informing us of your location. Chapter 1. The Crimson War had concluded only 3 nights prior, yet the lingering scent of incinerated landscapes still permeated the air. The lupine clans had emerged victorious, the human settlements reduced to embers, and the grand edifice crowning the mountain peak was now cloaked in a shroud of smoke and an oppressive silence. Ara of the Valley navigated the blood-stained courtyard, her satchel heavy with medicinal herbs, her hands quivering. Each deliberate step echoed across the polished marble where once jubilant crowds had cheered. Now, watchful eyes, their irises the hue of molten gold, observed her with the wary intensity of predators, anticipating the slightest movement. "She's the last healer," a hushed voice murmured from behind her. "The king eliminates anyone who approaches him." Ara feigned ignorance, her breathing shallow, her heart a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The summons had arrived with the dawn, its seal of black wax bearing the royal insignia, a predatory claw superimposed upon a crown. To refuse was unthinkable, for the Alpha King's decree carried the inescapable weight of mortality. She adjusted her hood, her fingers tightening around the pouch of moonroot and wolfsbane secured at her waist. "You are a healer, not prey," she reassured herself. Nevertheless, as the colossal doors swung open, the pungent odor of blood and iron nearly compelled her retreat. Within, the throne room was cavernous and dim, shadows contorting like spectral figures between the towering pillars. At its heart, upon a throne fashioned from obsidian, sat the sovereign known as the Beast King. He was not as she had envisioned, not monstrous, nor aged, but possessed of a vitality that was almost overwhelming to behold. The Alpha King leaned forward, his forearms resting on his knees, his golden eyes blazing from beneath a mane of dark hair. The subtle gleam of his claws caught the flickering torchlight. A fresh wound marred his shoulder, a gash so deep it would have been fatal to any ordinary man, yet he showed no sign of distress. "Approach," he commanded, his voice resonating like an impending tempest over ancient stone. Ara complied, her boots whispering softly on the floor. She felt the palpable weight of his scrutiny, as though it were a physical force. "You're trembling," he observed. "I am not," she lied, though her racing pulse betrayed her. A faint curl touched his lip, not of kindness, but of keen interest. They say you mended an entire legion by the riverbank without succumbing. How? I pray and I work swiftly. His words were direct. You will require both. He rose, his movement fluid and predatory, an embodiment of raw power even in his wounded state. His scent, a blend of cedar, smoke, and something darker, filled the air. As he moved closer, close enough for her to discern the ragged edges of his injury, she hesitated. Attend to it, he commanded. Ara placed her satchel on the floor, her fingers brushing the marble for stability. She withdrew a vial of silver wort oil and a sprig of blessed sage. This will burn, she cautioned. He offered no response. When her palm made contact with his skin, a jolt of warmth coursed through her arm, alive, electric. The wound hissed, tendrils of steam rising from the application. Her innate healing abilities responded instinctively, ethereal light spiraling from her fingertips like moonlit threads, knitting flesh together. But beneath this surface, something else pulsed, something unsettling. Her breath hitched. What? Finish it, he growled, his hand clamping onto her wrist. His claws did not pierce her skin, but his grip was unyielding. Do not cease. The atmosphere grew heavy, vibrating with latent energy. Each heartbeat became a resonant drum, his, then hers, then both merging into an impossible, unified rhythm. The mark upon his collarbone flared with a golden light. For a fleeting moment, she felt a distinct resonance beneath her own ribs, a spark, a tether, a profound connection. She snatched her hand away, stumbling backward. No. The king exhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling with carefully restrained power. You felt it. That cannot be. I am human. Not any longer. He advanced towards her, and she realized too late that her trembling was fueled by more than just apprehension. The connection had awakened something buried deep within her, something she could not comprehend, a force that was both terrifying and undeniably magnetic. The mate bond, he murmured, as if to himself. After all these years, you are mistaken. His gaze deepened. Do you truly believe I am ignorant of my own scent, my power, my mate? Era shook her head, retreating until her back pressed against the cold stone of the pillar. You are cursed. Everyone knows it. They say I kill my healers. Her throat constricted. Is it true? Yes. He moved closer, cornering her between the unforgiving stone and the radiating warmth of his body. Because every one of them attempted to end my life first. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. Then why summon me? Because this time, destiny intervened. He turned away abruptly, shattering the invisible cord that bound them. The torch flames danced, casting elongated shadows that crept up the walls. When he spoke again, his voice had softened, fractured by a vulnerability that bordered on human. I was afflicted at the river's edge, not by blade or fang, but by moonfire, a blight that consumes the very essence of the bond. It eradicates from within. Ara's healer's intuition instantly engaged. Moonfire, a legendary contagion born of malevolence and dark sorcery, which targeted the spirit rather than the flesh. Only one remedy could impede its progression: a shared essence. You summoned me to bleed for you, he stated plainly. Your gift manifests through touch. The venom feeds on that connection. If you possess sufficient strength, you can draw it forth. And if I am not strong enough, then you will perish. He turned to face her fully once more, his eyes inscrutable. But in either outcome, the bond between us will remain unbroken. Ara's hands trembled as she prepared the ceremonial bowl. She meticulously crushed the herbs with a silver pestle, sage for mental clarity, wolfsbane for protection, and moonroot for equilibrium. Each fragrance intertwined with the pervasive smoke and the metallic tang of blood. The king sat opposite her, silent, his gaze following her every movement. You despise me, he stated at last. I do not know you well enough for such a sentiment. He almost smiled. You will. She dipped her fingers into the oil, reciting the ancient incantations of the healer's vow. By earth and flame, by breath and bone, I mend what life has torn. The luminescence reappeared, this time softer, a gentle blue rather than gold. It flowed between them like water meeting fire. She reached deeper, past skin, past muscle, until she encountered it, the poison. A chilling pulse coiled around his heart. As she attempted to extract it, an agonizing pain seared through her chest. She gasped, clutching at her ribs. "Cease!" he barked. She shook her head, a silent refusal. A brilliant light erupted between their clasped hands, forcing them apart. The torch flames blazed with an intense white light, and both were thrown backward, breathless. The wound on his shoulder was entirely gone, leaving no scar, no trace. However, her wrist now bore a faint golden mark, an exact replica of the one adorning his throat. He stared at it. "It is complete." Her voice was a whisper. "What is that mark?" "The bond seal," he replied softly. "Now, when I bleed, so too will you." The silence that descended was suffocating, broken only by their ragged breaths echoing in the vast chamber. Ara rose unsteadily, her knees threatening to buckle under the immense weight of the connection now forged between them. He turned away, flexing his healed arm. "Depart before dusk. The moon will ascend shortly, and it is imperative for your safety that you do not witness what follows." She paused. "Your Majesty, the healer has attended to you." His tone hardened. "This is final. You have done enough." Ara gathered her satchel and moved towards the exit, but at the threshold she stopped. The torchlight cast his silhouette across the floor, elongated, fractured, disturbingly lupine. "I do not believe in destiny," she stated quietly. He did not look at her. "You will, before this is over." Outside, the wind howled across the courtyard, carrying the distant, mournful cry of wolves. The mark on her wrist burned like a brand beneath the biting chill of the night. As she descended the palace steps, one thought remained stubbornly lodged in her mind. His words, half threat, half prophecy. "Now when I bleed, you will too." And deep within her chest, something ancient stirred in response. The moon still hung high in the sky when they came for her. Ara awoke to the distinct sound of footsteps echoing on stone. 4 guards, clad in crimson armor, their faces obscured by the menacing visors of wolf helms. The mark on her wrist still emanated a faint glow, like embers beneath the skin. "The king summons you," one declared, his voice clipped and precise as if reciting a practiced line. She pulled her cloak tighter around her. "It is nearly dawn," he added immediately. Her heart gave a sudden lurch. She yearned to refuse, to demand an explanation for the king's summons at such an ungodly hour, or to understand why her veins still pulsed with an inexplicable thrum whenever her thoughts drifted towards him. Yet the resolute glint in their eyes left no room for defiance. The corridors seemed colder this time, the torch flames hissing in their sconces as they passed, casting their elongated shadows across the marble. It felt akin to traversing the skeletal remains of some colossal, ancient creature, hollow, haunted, and filled with a primal hunger. As the doors to the throne hall parted, the first sight that greeted her was not the king's resplendent crown, but a dark pool of blood at his feet. He stood at the foot of the dais, breathing heavily, his shirt discarded. His left hand clutched his side, where the wound she had meticulously healed the previous night was now completely absent. However, dark, serpentine veins snaked upwards across his chest, resembling fissures in stone. "Moonfire," she breathed, freezing in place. He looked up, his golden eyes blazing with an intensity that belied his evident exhaustion. "It is spreading. I have little time." "You said it was gone." "I said you halted it," he corrected, his voice rough and strained. "Not that you cured it." Her fingers instinctively moved towards her satchel. "Then allow me." "No," he interrupted, stepping forward. "Not until you pledge yourself to me." Ara blinked in disbelief. "What?" "The court will not permit a human to continue attending to me unless bound by blood. They are already murmuring that I have been ensnared, that the healer's sorcery weakens me." Ara's breath hitched. "And your solution is to make me your chattel?" "Not a slave," he countered quietly. "Bound, protected, caged." She spat the words. You would brand me to preserve your reputation. The king's jaw tightened. Do you imagine this crown offers protection to anyone? Do you think I relish this curse, this throne? He advanced another step, the black veins pulsing ominously beneath his skin like writhing serpents. I desire to live, healer, and you are the only one capable of arresting this affliction that consumes me. For a prolonged moment, an absolute silence descended, punctuated only by the steady drip of blood from his palm onto the marble floor, a rhythmic, relentless cadence. Ara swallowed hard. If I refuse, then when the poison reaches my heart, I will drag you into death alongside me. This was not a threat. It was a stark truth spoken through agonizing pain. Her chest tightened. Why me? Surely there are others. There were, he stated darkly. They are deceased. He extended his bloodied hand. Pledge yourself, Era of the Valley. Bind your name to mine, and you shall live. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to flee. Yet, the healer within her, the woman who had dedicated her life to saving others, even those deemed unworthy, took a hesitant step forward. She could not bear to witness another man's demise, not even this one. Drawing her dagger from its sheath, she deliberately slashed her palm. The sharp scent of blood, a mixture of iron and smoke, permeated the air. "Then hear me, Alpha King," she declared, her voice remarkably steady. "I pledge nothing to your throne, nothing to your name, but I swear to preserve the life before me, even if it means my own damnation." The king's gaze flickered, a complex mix of approval, sorrow, and perhaps something more. "Then let it be so." Before she could react, he grasped her wrist. His blood mingled with hers, the contact searing. The air grew heavy, humming like distant thunder. Ancient symbols flared to life along the floor, spirals of golden light converging upon them both. Ara gasped. "What are you doing?" "The blood oath," he murmured. "Ancient magic, predating wolves, predating crowns." Their joined hands burned as if branded by searing flame. Power surged through her, not gentle or restorative, but primal and overwhelming. Her vision blurred with fleeting visions, fragments of memories not her own, a battlefield bathed in crimson moonlight, a child's desperate cry in the snow, a crown tumbling into a pool of blood. The world snapped back into focus. The king collapsed to one knee, his strength utterly depleted. The poison was accelerating, fueled by the ritual. "Damn it!" Ara hissed, catching his shoulders. "You are dying faster." He attempted to speak, but a violent cough racked him, black blood spilling from his lips. The dark veins had reached his throat now, pulsing with encroaching shadow. "Do not touch me," he rasped. "It will claim you as well." "Then let it," she snapped, pressing her palm against his chest once more, directly over where his heart should have ceased its beating. Light erupted. This time it was not white or blue, but a stark silver, as cold as winter water. She felt it permeate her very bones, his pain, his memories, his rage, all bleeding into her like a second, unwelcome heartbeat. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please." His eyes fluttered open, and for a single, breathtaking moment, they were not golden, but a warm, human brown. Then, the chamber was consumed by an explosive light. When consciousness returned, she found herself lying on the cold floor beside him. The torches had burned down to embers. The first pale rays of dawn were piercing through the high windows. Her wrist still throbbed with a lingering heat, the mark now a complete circle, intricately woven with the faint outline of a wolf's eye. The king stirred beside her, appearing pale but undeniably alive. The black veins had vanished. Ara pushed herself up, her arms trembling. "You are healed." He blinked slowly, as if awakening from a profound dream. "And you are still breathing." "I should not be," she muttered, her gaze fixed on her marked wrist. "What have you done to me?" "I told you," he said, his voice hoarse. "The blood oath binds both destinies. My heart beats. Yours follows. My blood spills. You bleed." She looked at him, aghast. "You have turned me into a living tether." "I have provided you with protection," he countered. No wolf will dare harm that which bears my mark. Protection? Her voice trembled. You have shackled me to your curse. He met her gaze, an expression of something sharp, almost desperate in his eyes. Better chained and alive than free and dead. Ara stood, a tremor of fury coursing through her. You call this living? You have poisoned me with the rot of your kingdom. You saved me, he stated simply. Even now, you could have walked away. She longed to strike him, to scream at him, but the undeniable truth of his words silenced her. She had saved him, and the bond, whatever its nature, hummed beneath her skin, alive and aware. He rose slowly, his movements imbued with a grace that belied his profound exhaustion. The dawn light sculpted the lines of his face, highlighting the scar across his jaw and the weariness etched deeper than pride could conceal. You do not comprehend, he said softly. If the council discovers this bond, they will kill you. They will brand you a witch, a usurper. They will tear this castle apart to break the curse they believe you have brought. Then undo it, she demanded. He hesitated. I cannot. They stood in silence, the cold morning wind whispering through the high arches. Finally he spoke. You will remain within the palace under my direct protection. I will not be your prisoner. Then do not be. His gaze locked with hers, steady and unreadable. Be my equal. The words caught her completely by surprise. Equal in oath, in blood, in life, he murmured, until this curse is resolved. Ara felt the bond pulse once more, the invisible thread connecting them tightening. It was not affection, not yet, but something raw, magnetic, and inherently dangerous. She turned away before he could discern the confusion clouding her expression. You speak like a man who has no intention of surviving. Perhaps I do not, he replied, his tone so calm that she almost missed the profound truth beneath it. It was not arrogance, but a deep-seated exhaustion. The war, the curse, the very weight of the throne. They had all exacted a heavy toll. And for the first time, she saw him not as the monstrous ruler of the wolves, but as a man who had forgotten how to be anything else. Later, upon returning to her chambers, she discovered her satchel was missing. In its place lay a single silver dagger, intricately engraved with a wolf's eye, identical to the mark upon her wrist. Beside it rested a note, for protection from me, or for me. Ara gazed at it for a long time. Outside, the dawn had fully broken. The city below the palace was beginning to stir, merchants setting up their stalls, children chasing each other through the dissipating mist. The ordinary world remained oblivious to the fact that, somewhere above, two souls now shared a single heartbeat. She touched the mark on her wrist again. It pulsed faintly, then more strongly, as if responding to his. In the throne room beyond, the Alpha King's pulse quickened as well, his eyes opening as though he had somehow heard her unspoken thought. Deep within both of them, the bond whispered a singular truth that neither could ignore. It was not mercy that bound them, but destiny sharpening its claws. By sunrise, the palace was alive with hushed whispers. From the bustling kitchens to the highest turrets, one name spread like wildfire. Ara of the Valley, the healer, the human, the woman for whom the Alpha King had bled. The council convened in secret chambers before the dawn had fully broken. Servants exchanged knowing glances as they polished goblets and replenished torch fuel. Every furtive glance directed towards Ara carried the same peculiar blend of fear and morbid fascination, as though witnessing a phantom who had somehow defied her own execution. By mid-morning, even the court observers had devised new appellations for her. The sorceress who had ensnared the king, the curse embodied in human form, the king's favored pet. She navigated the corridors beneath their murmurs, her chin held high, her hands steady, though a storm churned within her stomach. The golden mark on her wrist had deepened overnight, no longer glowing, but pulsing with a faint rhythmic beat, mirroring the king's heartbeat within her veins. She had barely slept since the blood oath. Every time her eyes closed, she felt it, that shared pulse, the silent tether that inextricably bound her to him. and though she detested it, a part of her harbored a growing dread of what might transpire if it ever ceased. When the royal guard intercepted her, she was in the palace gardens, attempting to find solace in the scent of damp earth and rosemary. "The king requests your presence," one stated stiffly. Ara looked up from the herb beds. "Now," he nodded. "The council convenes." Her chest tightened. "For what purpose?" The guard hesitated. "To witness your coronation, my lady." She froze. "My what?" Before she could utter another word, another guard produced a silver circlet. It was not a crown, but a collar, intricately etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. She instinctively stepped back. "That is not His Majesty's command," the guard hastened to explain, bowing his head to avoid her gaze. "You are to wear it before the court. It is symbolic of his claim, of what he has embraced." The throne hall had never felt so immense. The nobles stood in concentric rings around the dais, wolves of every rank and lineage, their eyes gleaming with either gold or silver light, their postures as sharp and alert as drawn blades. The palpable scent of dominance filled the air like a thick, cloying smoke. At the far end stood the Alpha King. He was attired not in armor, but in ceremonial black, a silver wolf sigil glinting at his chest. His iron crown rested against hair the color of storm clouds. He exuded every inch of his monarchical status, lethal, unbending, and profoundly alone. As Ara entered, the murmurs began anew. "Human!" One courtier hissed under his breath. "She has bewitched him. She reeks of weakness. No human can endure the bond." The king's gaze flickered towards her. For a fleeting moment, the crowd vanished. The air between them pulsed with that familiar resonance, the bond whispering, "Alive and undeniable." Then his voice cut through the hall like a honed blade. "Step forward, Ara of the Valley." She obeyed, each step echoing louder than the last. Her heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with a rising fury. Fury that he would parade her before his pack like a trophy. Fury that he had chosen this method to announce what he had done to her. Upon arriving at the dais, she offered a mere inclination of her head. "Your Majesty," the king acknowledged, studying her intently. "Do you comprehend the significance of this day?" "I understand that the wolves are observing, and that they would much rather see me deceased than crowned," she replied softly. A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. The king's gaze narrowed, not in displeasure, but with a hint of amusement. "Then let them observe," he declared, turning to address the assembled court. "By the covenant of our ancient pact, by the very blood that inextricably links my existence to hers, I proclaim this woman my chosen queen." Gasps erupted. The faces of the counselors paled to the shade of ash. One venerable elder even stepped forward, raising a protest. "Your Majesty, she is human. The bloodlines forbid it." "My bloodline forbids nothing," the king retorted, his tone frigid. "The pact has been forged. Her life sustains mine. To reject her is to reject my dominion." Another voice snarled from the throng. "Then your dominion is already irrevocably flawed." The king's eyes blazed with a sudden golden intensity. "Then kneel before your flawed king and live, or stand against me and perish." An absolute silence descended. The entire chamber bowed. Even the wolves who harbored animosity towards him lowered their heads, quivering beneath the sheer weight of his authority. Only Lara remained resolutely still. He turned his attention back to her, his expression inscrutable. He then lifted the ornate collar from its pedestal. The silver runes pulsed with a faint luminescence as he held it suspended between them. "This," he stated with quiet gravity, "is the emblem of the Queen of Wolves. Once adorned, it cannot be removed until death. It binds not merely blood, but essence." Allah's throat tightened. "A restraint," she breathed. He paused, a fleeting hesitation. "A diadem," he corrected. The court watched with bated breath as he drew nearer. The atmosphere crackled with an almost tangible energy. He raised the collar towards her neck. "Kneel." Her chin lifted defiantly. "No." Every noble present froze. The king's eyes flickered, a flash of surprise, then something far more ominous. "Do not presume to challenge me, healer. I am not your subject," she declared, her voice clear, though trembling with suppressed indignation. "You have bound me without my assent, paraded me as a prize, and now you intend to place this collar upon me before your pack to assert your dominance. But if I am to kneel, it will be on my own terms, not yours." A wave of astonishment swept through the court. For a long, agonizing moment, he remained silent. Then, to the profound surprise of everyone present, he lowered the collar. "Then stand," he said softly. He moved to stand behind her. The chilling sensation of metal brushed against her skin. The collar settled into place with a seamless, irreversible click. A brilliant flash of silver light suffused the hall, illuminating the intricately carved wolf sigils adorning the walls. The runes flared once, then subsided, leaving a subtle shimmer around her throat. "It is concluded," he stated. All lifted her chin, meeting his gaze over her shoulder. "Then may your wolves suffocate in their silence." Gasps echoed. Even the guards flinched, but the king merely smiled, the subtlest, most perilous smile she had ever witnessed. "Be mindful, my queen," he murmured, his voice barely audible to her alone. "They may begin to believe you." As the ceremony reached its conclusion, the court dispersed in a state of uneasy quietude. Some cast glares of undisguised animosity in her direction, others regarded her with wary deference. The palpable tension that had permeated the chamber had transformed from distaste into something akin to dread. Ara turned to depart, but the king's hand clasped her arm. "You should not have dared to defy me," he admonished. "Nay, you should not have dared to humiliate me. I bestowed power upon you," he countered. "You gave me chains," she retorted, freeing her arm with a tug. "And I intend to locate the key." He exhaled slowly, his eyes searching hers. "Do you imagine I desired this? That I wished for you to be in this den of wolves, marked and reviled?" She blinked, taken aback by the raw vulnerability in his tone. "Then why did you do it?" "Because the court needed to witness," he explained, his voice rough and weary. "They needed to comprehend that you were under my protection. The wolves will not dare to touch what belongs to the throne." "Belongs?" she hissed. "I am not a possession." "No," he conceded softly. "You are my vulnerability." The words struck her with a force greater than any threat could have mustered. He released her arm and turned away. Later, within the privacy of her chambers, Ara stood before the looking-glass, tracing the edge of the collar. The runes glowed faintly in the candlelight, delicate, almost aesthetically pleasing, were it not for their profound implication. Her reflection appeared altered now. No longer the apprehensive healer who had arrived at the palace gates in a state of trepidation, but someone more resolute, more assured, a woman whose act of defiance had just reverberated through a gathering of predators, and who had emerged unharmed to witness their apprehension. She touched the insignia on her wrist. It pulsed once in synchronicity with the collar's subtle luminescence. For a fleeting instant, she envisioned tearing it away. She imagined the sensation of liberation. Yet another thought emerged, quieter, more perilous. What if empowerment felt more appealing? Outside, the mournful cries of wolves echoed through the night, resonating against the stone ramparts like an approaching tempest over the kingdom. Allah tilted her head towards the sound. "Louder," she whispered. "Let them hear the name of their queen." The wind seemed to carry her words into the darkness, a solemn vow, not a supplication. By the time the sun began its descent behind the mountainous peaks, the palace had already emptied, its inhabitants migrating towards the bordering forest. The moon hunt was a hallowed tradition, an ancient trial designed to ascertain the fortitude of queens, whether chosen or cursed. For many, it culminated in bloodshed. All stood at the periphery of the royal stables, cloaked in dark leather, her palms slick with apprehension. The silver collar encircling her throat gleamed faintly in the dim illumination, a stark reminder that this was not an invitation, but an imperative. The king emerged from the encroaching shadows, already attired for the hunt. His armor, a lustrous black, was adorned with symbols that captured the fading sunlight. His wolfen eyes glowed a molten gold beneath the open-faced helm. "Do you comprehend the reason they refer to it as the hunt at twilight?" he inquired, his voice calm yet sharp. She met his gaze directly. "Because twilight conceals the cries." A corner of his mouth curved upwards. "Because the light always succumbs first." He presented her with a short blade, its hilt intricately wrapped in crimson leather. "Remain close to me, irrespective of any unfolding circumstances." "I had presumed this to be a test," she remarked. "It is, but not of fidelity, of sheer endurance." The moonlit forest loomed ahead, alive with the mingled scents of rain and pine. Mist coiled amongst ancient roots, and every rustle of leaves conveyed a sense of exhalation. Wolves, his loyal warriors, dispersed throughout the trees, their eyes emanating a faint luminescence as they awaited the moon's ascendance. Ara followed the king through the dense undergrowth, her boots sinking into the yielding earth. The very air vibrated with impalpable tension. She could feel it through their connection, his heartbeat steady and deliberate, like a resonant drum heralding the arrival of destiny. "Why have you brought me here?" she questioned softly. He did not glance back. "Because the court remains skeptical of what they cannot perceive. They regard you as merely a woman possessing a healer's aptitude. Tonight, you will reveal your greater capacity." "And if I falter, then the forest shall feast well," he stated plainly. Ara scowled. "You find this amusing?" "Not to the degree you might imagine." He halted abruptly, raising a hand. The wolves in their vicinity tensed. From the depths of the trees, a faint sound of hooves reached them, distant, measured, incongruous. "Remain behind me," he murmured. From the dense foliage, figures materialized, not of wolf kind, but men clad in dark attire, their armor devoid of any heraldic crest. Asara's breath hitched. "Who are they?" "They are not of my retinue." The initial arrow flew. The king reacted with astonishing swiftness, his claws extending as he parried the projectile. A second arrow pierced his shoulder. He exhibited no outward sign of discomfort. The wolves surged forward, plunging the surroundings into a maelstrom of conflict. Growls, cries, the clash of steel against fang. Ara dropped to the ground as another arrow whizzed past her ear. "Depart!" he commanded, drawing his sword. "Flee!" Yet she did not move. She discerned it, the subtle shimmer of venom coating the arrows, the identical dark sheen she had previously observed. Moonfire. The assailants were not targeting her. Their objective was his demise. The king fought valiantly, dismembering one of his attackers, but a blade found its mark in his side. He collapsed to one knee, his breathing strained. The venom was swift in its action, creeping through his veins like an encroaching frost. Ara's body moved with an instinct that preceded conscious thought. She slid beside him, supporting his weight. "Remain still," he commanded, grasping her wrist. "No, the bond. It will be your undoing as well. Then we shall perish together." She pressed her palm against his wound. The forest seemed to fall into a profound stillness around them. Her inherent magic surged forth. Not the gentle golden hue of healing, but a fierce, unnatural cerulean. Power flowed from her very being into his. Excessively potent, uncontrollably wild. It burned through the venom that was burning through her. She cried out as the light etched fiery pathways across her arm. Visions flooded her mind's eye. A woman adorned with a silver crown, standing within this very forest centuries prior, a lineage of healers with eyes of flame, a child born bearing the mark of both wolf and human. Upon regaining her senses, the assailants had vanished, their remains strewn across the clearing. The king lay inert in her lap, his breaths shallow but steady. The cerulean luminescence receded from her hands, leaving behind faint sigils seared into her palms. "Ara!" His voice was a rasp, barely human. "What have you done?" She gazed down at her hands. I do not know." "Yes, you do." His gaze searched hers intently. That power, it was neither wolf nor human. It was something far more ancient. She shook her head, Yet the memory of that crowned woman persisted, vividly imprinted behind her eyes. I have never witnessed magic of such magnitude. Because no living soul has, he murmured. You have stirred that which ought to have remained dormant. The wolves returned mere minutes later, bearing the remaining bodies. One knelt before the king, his head bowed in deference. Your Majesty, they bear the insignia of the Iron Fang clan. Exiled. They must have breached the border at dawn. The king's eyes darkened ominously. Then the council has already betrayed us. Ara frowned in confusion. You suspect this was orchestrated? I know it was. He rose unsteadily, his gaze falling upon her burned hands. And now they will perceive you as the threat they have always apprehended. She swallowed nervously. Because I saved you. Because you did so with unparalleled efficacy. They returned to the palace well past midnight. The hunt had concluded, though no one dared to speak of the events that transpired in the forest. The wolves who had been privy to the spectacle averted their eyes. News of her formidable power would undoubtedly spread by morning, with the rapidity of wildfire and twice its inherent danger. Within the king's private chambers, he sat by the hearth, having shed his armor, the remnants of blood still staining his shoulder. Ara knelt beside him, tending to the wound once more, though it had already begun to mend. He observed her hands intently. The burn marks, they do not inflict pain. No, she confirmed, but they will not fade. They are runes, he stated softly. Royal ones. She looked up in astonishment. Royal from the original bloodline, the inheritors of the silver throne, those who governed before the ascendance of the wolves. Her breath hitched. That is mere folklore. As was the alliance between human and alpha, he countered. Until you. She leaned back, her heart pounding erratically. What are you implying? I am suggesting that the healers of your valley did not merely acquire their expertise. They inherited it. You are not simply human, Ara. You are a descendant of the lost royal lineage, the blood that once commanded the allegiance of the wolves. The words struck her with the force of a physical blow. That is impossible. He leaned closer, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. You bear their mark. The forest recognized you this evening. It obeyed your command. I did not command anything, she protested. I simply reacted. Precisely, he murmured. Instinct. The blood remembers, even when history forgets. She rose abruptly, pacing agitatedly. You fail to grasp the implications. If the court discovers this, they already harbor suspicions, he stated darkly. And that is precisely why you cannot be separated from my side. Her head snapped towards him. You mean your leash? He stood as well, looming over her, but his demeanor had softened. I mean protection. They will target you next. You have made formidable adversaries this evening. And what of yourself? She inquired softly. You nearly perished. His lips curved into a faint smile. I have endured worse for lesser causes. She stared at him. This man, who had once instilled profound terror within her, now stood before her as both an impenetrable shield and a potential peril. The connection between them pulsed once more, deep and insistent, no longer merely a mystical phenomenon, but a clear acknowledgement of kinship. She took a slow, deliberate breath. If I am indeed as you describe, if my lineage possesses the capacity to both heal and devastate, then the throne was never rightfully mine to begin with, he concluded, their gazes locked, the undeniable truth hanging suspended between them like a tempest of fire and ice. Outside, thunder rumbled across the mountains, and the wolves howled, not in celebration, but as a somber warning. The hunt had concluded. The war had just commenced. The night bled crimson across the palace grounds. The moon hung low in the sky, swollen and unnaturally large, casting the marble halls in hues of claret and shadow. Ara awoke to its ethereal glow, filtering through the silken curtains, disoriented and drenched in sweat. Her hands throbbed as if they had been consumed by flames. Then she heard it, a voice. Ara, the chambers of the Alpha King. She was in his bed. She sat up with excessive haste. The room swam. Her pulse throbbed insistently against the collar adorning her throat, that accursed symbol of his claim. The mingled scents of wolf and iron lingered heavily in the air. He lay beside her on the bed, partially attired, his skin slick with fever. The bandages on his chest were saturated with blood that shimmered faintly in the moonlight, not red, but streaked with silver. "Your Majesty," she whispered. His eyes snapped open. For a fleeting moment, they were not gold, but molten amber, wild and unseeing. "Ara," he reached for her, his hand trembling as though the mere exertion demanded immense effort. "You should not be awake," she murmured, catching his wrist. "You have reopened the wound." He pulled her closer with a surprising surge of strength. His breath brushed her neck, hot and ragged. "I saw you perish." Her body grew rigid. "What did you say?" He shuddered, his voice thick with delirium. "The prophecy. I believed." His eyes were unfocused. "It was destined to conclude with me." "Prophecy?" she whispered. He offered no reply. His breathing gradually slowed, then steadied. Sleep reclaimed him, but his hand did not release hers. Era remained seated in silence, her pulse hammering against her ribs. His words echoed within her mind like an incantation. "I saw you perish." When she attempted to disengage, the bond burned beneath her skin. A faint, golden ache emanated from her wrist. With every exhalation he made, her pulse mirrored it. She could almost feel the fever coursing through his body, shared via that damnable tether. She rose from the bed and moved to the window. The crimson moon was full and monstrous, its light spilling across the courtyard like liquid blood on glass. She had grown up hearing tales of the moon prophets, sorceresses who possessed the gift of foresight, whose visions were inscribed in blood. Yet no one had spoken of them for generations, so why would he? She turned as she heard him stir again. He was sitting up now, breathing heavily, his face pallid beneath the fever's glow. The sight of him, so unguardedly human, stirred an emotion she preferred not to name. "You are awake," she stated, forcing a composure she did not feel. He blinked at her, disoriented. "How long?" 2 days, she lied. It had been less than one, but she intended to keep him off balance. His gaze swept over her, lingering on her burned palms. "The magic did not claim you, not for lack of trying." He let out a humorless laugh, then winced as a wave of pain struck him. "You should rest." "The bond?" "Do not speak to me of the bond," she retorted sharply. "You have already bound enough lives." Something flickered in his eyes. Was it regret or perhaps a memory resurfacing? "You remember then?" "I remember my clan consumed by flames," she stated, stepping closer. "I remember the sky choked with smoke and your banner flying defiantly above it." He offered no denial. The ensuing silence was colder than the night itself. "You annihilated them," she whispered. "Every healer, every child, my mother." Her voice cracked with emotion. "You slaughtered them all." His jaw clenched. "I did." "Why?" "Because of you." The words struck her with the impact of a physical blow. She staggered backward. "You are lying." He met her gaze unflinchingly. "The prophecy originated from the last moon prophet before the conflict. She spoke of a child born with the dual heritage of 2 thrones, human and wolf, destined to bring about the demise of the Alpha lineage, a child marked by fire, by healing." Ara's stomach churned with dread. "She foretold that child would kill me." His voice dropped, laden with the weight of memory. "So I did what monarchs do when prophecy threatens their dominion." "You destroyed an entire village." "I attempted to vanquish fate," he said quietly, "but fate had already discovered you." Her breath came in short, rapid gasps. "You murdered my family to protect yourself." "To protect you," he stated, his voice suddenly sharpening. "The prophecy was not about your demise. It was about what would transpire thereafter. They would have hunted you for it. The witches, the wolves, all of them. I eradicated the valley to end their pursuit." Her vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. You expect me to express gratitude for that? No, he replied softly. I expect your animosity. I deserve it. She turned away, gripping the window frame with such force that her knuckles turned white. You do. But animosity does not account for the ache beneath my ribs, the unbearable pull when I attempt to distance myself from you. The bond throbbed again, sentient and cruel, feeding on every emotion, pain, fury, longing, until she could no longer discern which belonged to her. Behind her, he rose. The sound of his bare feet on the marble sent a shiver down her spine. Ira, he said, her name a plea this time, not a command. Do not, she whispered. Do not utter my name in such a manner. I endeavored to maintain distance from you, he explained, his voice raw. Upon realizing your identity, I swore never to allow you near the palace, but you sought me out that night in the courtyard, and the bond... He trailed off, exhaling sharply. I felt it the instant you touched me. The gods are indeed cruel. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze. Do you believe this connection to be divine retribution? Perhaps it is a form of mercy, he stated quietly, to bestow upon me one singular thing worth dying for. The confession struck her like a searing flame. The air between them grew heavier, charged with unspoken emotions. He was close enough now that she could discern the subtle tremor in his hands, the sheen of perspiration on his throat. Her heart betrayed her. One step forward, then another. You murdered my family, she whispered. Yes. And do you still believe I could ever grant forgiveness? He looked at her as a man already facing condemnation. I do not require forgiveness, only the truth. Her breath trembled. And what truth is that? That you are not my vulnerability, he declared. You are my retribution. The distance between them dissolved. His hand rose to her collar, his fingers brushing the silver rune that marked her as his. She should have recoiled, but her body betrayed her. The bond flared, hot, electric, drawing her inexorably closer until her chest met his. Release me, she whispered, though her voice sounded hollow. A falsehood. I cannot, he stated, and neither can you. His lips hovered near hers, his breath mingling with hers, trembling with restraint. Tell me to cease, he murmured. She wanted to. God, she wanted to, but her throat refused to obey. Every fiber of her being was at war with itself, healer and queen, love and vengeance. Tell me. She closed her eyes. I despise you, she uttered. Then despise me closer, he breathed and kissed her. It was not gentle, it was not tender, it was war. Years of pent-up rage and profound grief and impossible longing colliding in a single, overwhelming heartbeat. The bond surged like a bolt of lightning, encompassing them both. Every memory, every wound, every concealed thought poured forth through that kiss. And for one wild, shattering instant, she understood him. He was not the monster who had destroyed her. He was the boy who had buried his heart with her people. When she pulled away, she was trembling. This changes nothing of what you did. I am aware, he said, his voice unsteady. But it alters what transpires next. She stared at him, her eyes burning. You believe I will remain after this? He smiled, a weary, mournful expression. You already have. The bond pulsed again, softer now. The fever that had raged within him had dissipated. She realized too late that her hands no longer burned. The magic had healed them both once more. She turned away, placing a hand over her chest as if to quell her racing heart. This curse, it will be our undoing. He sank back against the bed, closing his eyes. Then let it be. Perhaps we deserve it. Outside, thunder rumbled across the crimson sky. Ara stood at the window, watching the moon bleed into the horizon. Her tears finally fell, silent, furious, unending. And though she loathed him, though she desperately wished to rip the bond from her very skin, when she heard him whisper her name again in his sleep, her heart responded. The sound of iron chains was more profound than the beating of Allah's ears. They arrayed her in white, not silk, but the ceremonial garment worn by those condemned for sorcery. Each strand of fabric caught a faint shimmer in the torchlight, a mocking contrast to her own corrupted state. Guards escorted her through the opulent palace passageways, the heavy chain dragging a grating sound against the polished marble. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously across the mountain peaks. Within the palace walls, every attendant and noble lowered their heads in her presence, not in deference, but in palpable dread. The mortal queen, they whispered amongst themselves, the sorceress who cursed the Alpha sovereign, the woman destined to perish under the moon's gaze. She held her head high. If this was to be her final stand, she would meet it with unwavering dignity. At the hall's conclusion, 2 imposing doors swung open, revealing the entrance to the Moon Council chamber. The chamber itself was hewn entirely from obsidian and bone, a vast expanse capable of holding 100 wolves. At its heart lay the tribunal circle, where 12 high lords, clad in dark robes, sat beneath the spectral moonlight cascading from the crystalline dome above. Upon the elevated dais beyond them sat the Alpha King, his throne a solitary sentinel. He remained motionless, his expression as unyielding as carved stone, one hand resting on the arm of his seat, the other balled into a tight fist. The silver emblem of their shared connection pulsed faintly at his throat, concealed beneath his armor, yet its rhythm mirrored her own. He did not meet her gaze, not even for a fleeting moment. That silent dismissal inflicted a deeper wound than any physical restraint. "Present the accused," a counselor's voice boomed. Era was roughly guided to the center of the circle. The moonlight descended upon her like an indictment. "Your name?" the High Lord demanded. "Era of the Valley," she replied, her voice firm. "Your profession?" "Healer." "Your crime?" She met his eyes directly. "Saving your king's life." A wave of murmurs rippled through the assembly. The High Lord's lips curled into a sneer. "You mock this court?" "I speak only truth," she retorted. "If witchcraft is life, then by all means, I am guilty." A chorus of hisses rose from the onlookers. Nobles, advisors, even soldiers pressed against the chamber's boundaries, the air thick with the palpable sense of fear and fury. The High Lord turned his attention to the throne. "Your Majesty, the council charges this human with wielding forbidden arts, a sorcery that binds her existence to yours. This link diminishes your authority. It must be severed." "By her death," the king stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Ara's heart pounded against her ribs. She longed to cry out, to implore him to speak, to deny their accusations. But his silence was a more agonizing weapon than any blade. The ritual of accusation commenced. Each council member rose, intoning ancient decrees that predated their very existence. The laws of lineage, of sacred pacts, of inherent purity. Each pronouncement served to further condemn her. Human blood pollutes the wolf's pure lineage. The moon offers no favor to mortal unions. Magic unsanctioned by the Alpha is an abomination. The weight of each pronouncement reverberated through the chamber, solidifying her impending doom. When the High Lord finally turned back to her, his eyes glinted with icy disdain. "Do you deny this bond?" She hesitated for a moment. "I did not seek it, but you embraced it. I saved him," she declared. "I had no inkling of the consequences," the High Lord scoffed, "and now the entire kingdom bears the burden of your ignorance." He raised his hand. "By decree of the Moon Council, you are hereby sentenced." "Enough!" The king's voice boomed through the hall, echoing like a thunderclap. Every head immediately bowed. Even the counselors froze, stunned into silence. He rose from his throne with deliberate grace, each step measured as he descended the dais. The very air seemed to hum with his presence. The scent of storm and tempered steel permeated the chamber. Upon reaching the circle, his gaze finally met hers, not with warmth, but with an intensity that was both profound and piercing. "Do you fear death, Era?" he inquired, her breath catching in her throat. "No." "Do you fear me?" "I did," she admitted softly. Not anymore. A fleeting expression flickered across his features, a blend of pride and sorrow, perhaps both. He then addressed the council. "You speak of law," he stated, his voice resonating through the hushed hall. "You speak of blood and purity. Tell me, which decree preserved us from the Red War? Whose lineage brought it to an end?" The High Lord stiffened. "The Alpha line, as always." "Incorrect," the king countered, his voice so cold it seemed to extinguish all sound. "The war concluded when this healer preserved my life, when her blood, mortal blood, intertwined with mine, neutralizing the venom that none of you could combat." A murmur spread through the chamber, but the king ignored it. "You label it sorcery. I call it salvation." "Majesty," another lord protested, "this bond transgresses the ancient customs. If it persists, the prophecy is a fabrication," the king roared, his voice echoing with raw power. "And I will not stand idly by while another innocent soul is consumed by it." He strode forward, reaching into the folds of his cloak. She had mere moments to react before he drew his sword and plunged it into the very center of the tribunal circle. The ground beneath them trembled. The obsidian fractured, shattering the council's sacred insignia. The moonlight overhead flared a violent red, casting every wolf present in an infernal glow. Gasps of shock erupted. "You have violated the council's sacred oath," one of them cried. "Indeed," he replied simply, "I have." He turned back to her, his voice now softer, yet imbued with an undeniable finality. "Hear me, lords of the moon. By the authority of my crown, and by the blood that irrevocably binds us, I declare Ara of the Valley my rightful queen, sovereign of this realm, wearer of my mark, and protector of the Alpha throne." The chamber erupted into a maelstrom of chaos. "No!" the High Lord bellowed, striking his staff against the floor. "This union dooms us all." "The prophecy be damned," the king growled. "From this moment forth, the ancient laws are rendered void. If you defy me, you defy the crown itself. If so be it." A deafening roar ensued as several lords drew their blades. Wolves shifted their forms in the surrounding shadows, claws erupting from flesh, guttural snarls tearing through the hall. The king stepped protectively before Ara, his sword already drawn. The link between them blazed with renewed vigor, faint golden lines appearing beneath their skin. "Ara," he breathed, his voice barely audible. "When I give the word, run." "I am not leaving you," she whispered back. "This is not a matter of choice. You have made me your queen. Treat me as such." His eyes flickered, a tempest of fury and admiration swirling within them. "You are truly exasperating." "Then we are at an impasse." The first blade struck. The chamber descended into utter pandemonium. Wolves lunged towards the throne, their claws screeching against the marble. The king moved with blinding speed, his sword a lethal arc, cleaving through steel and bone alike. Ara ducked behind the dais, pressing her hands against the cold floor. The ancient magic thrummed beneath her palms, the same resonance she had felt in the depths of the forest, a whisper of her lineage stirring once more. She closed her eyes and reached for it. Power surged through her veins, potent and perilous. The torches flickered erratically. The marble cracked beneath her touch. When she opened her eyes, every wolf that had lunged for the throne stood frozen mid-action, their limbs ensnared by invisible tendrils of light. The king turned, his expression one of utter astonishment. "Alara," she declared, rising with a newfound grace, power radiating from her. "You desired your queen. Now, command me as one." He stared at her, not as a monarch surveying his subject, but as a man witnessing the profound and irreversible alteration of his world. The luminous energy receded. The wolves collapsed, gasping for air. The council fled in disarray, dragging their wounded comrades with them. As silence reasserted itself, Ara's legs buckled. The king caught her before she could fall. "You shouldn't have done that," he murmured. "You shouldn't have made me your queen," she breathed in return. He offered a faint smile. "And yet, here we are." Outside, The tolling of bells began, an alarm, not a celebration. From the distant towers, the unmistakable sound of war horns echoed. The kingdom had witnessed the forbidden magic. They had heard the nascent roar of rebellion. The king turned his gaze towards the shattered council chamber, his expression darkening with grim foreboding. They will come for us now. Every lord with a blade will rise against this union. Ara met his gaze unflinchingly. Then we fight. He brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. Do you comprehend the magnitude of your actions? Yes, she replied quietly. I have given them a new reason to fear. The moonlight bathed them both at that moment, silver over red, light over ruin. Their bond pulsed once more, sealing a vow that neither could ever retract. Their coronation was not a spectacle for the masses. It transpired beneath the fractured canopy of the moon chapel, a sanctuary long abandoned in the wake of past conflicts. The air was heavy with the lingering scent of incense and desolation. Verdant vines snaked through the shattered windows, entwining the stone pillars like grasping appendages. Only 12 torches blazed, each representing a house still loyal to the crown. Their flames flickered uneasily, as if sensing the sacrilege of the ceremony they illuminated. Ara stood at the altar beside the Alpha King, adorned not in silk, but in somber black, her mourning attire transformed into an emblem of regal authority. The silver adornment around her neck had been polished to a blinding sheen, and for the first time she wore the crown fashioned for her, an intricate circlet of moonstone and iron. Her heart beat in perfect synchronicity with his. It always has, he replied, his voice a low, almost sacred whisper. Are you ready? She nodded, her resolve unshakable. I was ready the moment they condemned me. He studied her for a long moment, 1,000 unspoken emotions passing through his gaze, regret, desire, pride, and fear. Then he turned towards the altar, raising his sword. The blade gleamed crimson in the torchlight, reflecting their intertwined visages. Before moon and flame, he began, his voice resonating with solemnity. I pledge this vow to bind our fates beyond blood, beyond crown, beyond mortal life. She repeated the words, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. Before moon and flame, I bind my heart to his. In darkness and in ruin, until the bond dissolves or the world itself ends. The ancient priest, the last of his order, lifted the chalice between them. Within it shimmered a liquid luminescence distilled from moonfire, the very element that had nearly claimed their lives. The king hesitated. This is perilous, he warned. Ara met his eyes, her gaze unwavering. So are we. They drank. For a breath-holding instant, nothing transpired. The very air seemed to suspend itself. Then the world convulsed. A blinding white light erupted from within the chapel, extinguishing the torches one by one. A tempestuous wind howled through the shattered windows, carrying whispers that were not words but myriad voices. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of ethereal echoes. The ancient magic, awakened from centuries of slumber. The king dropped the chalice, his hand clutching his chest. No! Ara gasped as the mark upon her wrist flared, searing with an unbearable heat. Golden veins illuminated beneath her skin, racing upwards like streaks of lightning. Across from her, his own marks mirrored the phenomenon. Gold bled into red, red darkened to black. The bond pulsed once, then fractured, not broken, but irrevocably altered. The chamber filled with an untamed, volatile energy. The crown slipped from her head, clattering against the stone floor. Her breaths became shallow gasps as pain, like licking flames, seared across her nerves. Ilara, he cried out, do not touch me. Yet she stumbled towards him, overcome with terror at the sound of his agony. The closer she drew, the more the air between them seemed to ignite. Sparks leaped from their fingertips. Gold and crimson clashed, locked in a desperate struggle. What is occurring? She cried out. The prophecy, he gasped. It is weaving itself through us. The The bond was never meant to be consummated. It is—" He choked, collapsing to his knees. "It is feeding upon the vow." Ara knelt beside him, reaching for his face. The instant her skin made contact with his, they both screamed. Flames erupted from their palms, spiraling upwards into the air. The torches reignited spontaneously, burning with an incandescent white heat. Outside, thunder ripped through the night sky, and every wolf in the kingdom let out a simultaneous howl, a mournful, earth-shattering cry that vibrated through the mountains. He wrenched himself away from her, trembling violently. "You must depart. If you remain, it will claim us both. I will not abandon you again," she vowed, her voice tight with resolve. "Ara, I implore you." His voice cracked with anguish. "Run!" But she could not. The very air seemed to hold her captive, tethered to him by a force far greater than any choice. Her magic surged against the encroaching curse, light against darkness, love battling against impending doom. Yet it only amplified the searing pain. With every breath she drew, she could feel his heartbeat fracturing within him. "Tell me what must be done," she begged. "End it," he whispered. "You are the only one capable of doing so." She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "I cannot bring myself to kill you." "You already possess the capacity," he stated, a weak smile gracing his lips. "The very first time you touched me, I sensed it. This bond does not make us whole. It forges us into weapons designed for each other's destruction." Tears streamed down her face. "That is untrue." "Then prove it," he challenged. She pressed her hands against his chest once more, disregarding the searing pain as her magic met his. Their energies merged, gold bleeding into red, entwining until they coalesced into a brilliant, impossible white. His breath hitched in his throat. "What are you doing? Breaking the prophecy?" she questioned, her voice trembling. "If it feeds on the vow, then I shall offer it what it craves." "Ara!" She leaned forward and sealed her lips upon his. The curse ignited. Every nerve ending in her body screamed in protest. The world exploded in a blinding flash of light. It was an exquisite agony, a divine ecstasy, a tempest of fury and salvation intertwined. The kiss consumed them both. Their souls were drawn into a vortex of fire and wind. Amidst the conflagration, she glimpsed fragmented visions, glimpses of both past and future intertwined. Her mother's sorrowful eyes, his crown falling amidst a sea of blood, the two of them standing amidst a field of desolate ash beneath a sky of pure gold. Then the light extinguished. She collapsed, her body racked with tremors, smoke rising from her scorched skin. The king lay beside her, utterly still. The curse had consumed everything within its grasp. Even the air felt hollowed and vacant. "Please," she whispered, reaching for him. Her fingers hovered an inch above his chest, paralyzed by a paralyzing fear of making contact. "Please do not be dead." He stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. "You are beyond all reason," he murmured, his voice hoarse. She exhaled a shaky breath that was a mixture of laughter and sob. "You have told me as much." He attempted a smile, but blood stained his lips. "You should have fled." "I told you," she said softly. "I do not flee from you." His gaze drifted upwards towards the ceiling, towards the crimson moon that glowed through the shattered dome. "Look," he whispered. She turned her head. The moonlight had transformed. Where it had once been a heavy, blood-red hue, it was now silver once more, soft and pure. The curse had not perished. It had merely shifted its form. The kingdom would endure, but at a cost neither could yet comprehend. "What have we done?" she murmured. "We have rewritten destiny," he stated faintly, "and destiny never forgives." Outside, the initial wolf howled. Not in lament this time, but in reverence. The others joined in, their cries echoing through the mountainous expanse. The flames that had scorched the chapel slowly receded, leaving behind embers that glowed like fallen stars. The king attempted to rise, but his strength failed him. Ara caught him, her burned hands trembling uncontrollably. "Rest," she urged. "It is over." His head fell against her shoulder. Nothing is over. The curse has awakened. It resides within me, within you, within every wolf that bears my lineage. Then we shall discover a means to quell it. He gave a weak, broken laugh. You still cling to the notion of saving me, even now? She brushed her thumb gently against his cheek. A small mercy, a small deception. No, I believe in saving us. As dawn broke over the ruined sanctuary, the crimson moon descended below the horizon. The bond between them still emanated a faint glow, but where it had once burned with a golden hue, it now shimmered with a haunting silver. Existing in a state between life and death. All rose slowly, the king still breathing against her shoulder. The priest had vanished, the torches were extinguished, the vow was complete. She raised her gaze to the sky, whispering into the void, "If love is a curse, then let it be mine." And as the first rays of light touched them both, the inaugural silver drop of rain descended from the heavens, not as a cleansing force, but as a claim, sealing the curse that would forever haunt their names. The kingdom began to decay beneath silver skies. What the curse had spared, it had hollowed. Wolves attacked each other in the thoroughfares. Their eyes glazed with the same fever that consumed their king. Crops withered and died. Rivers flowed sluggishly and gray. The once magnificent palace, her former prison and now her throne, had transformed into a mausoleum for a dying reign. And Ara, the queen responsible for this devastation, was gone. She rode beneath a hood of ash-colored cloth, her cloak tattered from nights spent in desperate flight. Every mile separating her from the palace ached in her very bones. The mark upon her wrist, once golden, then crimson, now a spectral white, pulsed faintly with each heartbeat that she knew was not her own. He is alive, she reassured herself each time the phantom pain flared. He must be. Yet the visions persisted, plaguing her at every twilight. Fleeting images of his face, pallid with fever, his hand gripping the throne's armrest, his labored breaths. On one occasion, she believed she heard him whisper her name through their shared bond. But when she reached out, all she perceived was the echo of his torment. By the third night, the dense forests of the northern frontier loomed before her, their black pines stretching like silent sentinels into the swirling mist. Beyond them lay the desolate lands of exile, where the condemned and the forgotten vanished without a trace. Somewhere within that bleak expanse resided the individual rumored to know the curse's origin, the Elder Witch. Ara dismounted near a frozen, babbling brook. Her horse trembled beneath her, utterly exhausted. "Rest," she murmured, stroking its neck. "We have both run far enough." The moon hung full once more, a pale, cruel orb observing their plight. Every shadow seemed to contort into grasping claws. The bond burned with renewed intensity, like a knife twisting in her ribs. She clutched her chest, falling to her knees. Amidst the searing pain, she saw him, the Alpha King, collapsing onto the marble floor, blood seeping from his lips, his eyes becoming glassy and unfocused. "No," she gasped, her voice cracking with despair. "Not yet. Please, not yet." The vision receded, leaving only her ragged breaths in its wake. As she looked up, a figure stood across the stream, cloaked in raven feathers. The woman's face was ageless, neither young nor old, her eyes a tempest of silver and black. "You carry death within your veins," she said softly, "and yet you still walk." "Ara, the queen," she whispered, trembling. "You are the witch." "Names hold little sway here," the woman replied, stepping closer. "But yes, I have been awaiting you." "For me?" The witch offered a faint smile. "The moon foretold your arrival, the cursed queen with a fading bond and a bleeding heart." Ara's knees buckled once more, the pain intensifying. "He is dying." "I am aware," the witch confirmed. "Then tell me how to save him." The witch tilted her head. "Why seek to preserve the one who doomed you?" Ara's throat tightened. "Because he did not choose this fate. Neither of us did." "But I can end it," the witch stated with finality. The witch studied her for a prolonged period. Then she turned, gesturing for Era to follow. Come. The forest listens more attentively to honesty than to arrogance. They walked until the trees crowded so closely that light could barely penetrate. In a hollow formed by ancient roots, the witch knelt and meticulously spread a circle of salt. Within this boundary, she placed a bowl of black water, which reflected no stars. This is the very essence of the curse, she declared. Look and witness what you have entwined yourself with. Ara leaned over the bowl. The water rippled, then displayed the throne room, now cloaked in a shroud of mist. The king sat slumped upon the throne, his skin pallid, his veins glowing with the same dark luminescence that had once pulsed through her. His life ebbs with yours, the witch murmured. 2 hearts, 1 soul. You are perishing together, albeit at a slower pace than the rest. There must be a solution, Ara pleaded, a way to sever it without taking his life. There is no severance, the witch stated gently, only an exchange. Ara frowned. What do you mean? The witch's eyes gleamed with knowing. You bear his connection, but not his suffering. The curse thrives on imbalance. The king's torment without the queen's shared agony. To restore equilibrium, you must absorb what he has endured, every wound, every drop of blood shed by his decree. Era stared in horror. You are suggesting I must accept his pain, all of it. Her voice trembled. That would be my end. Perhaps. The witch's tone was neither cruel nor compassionate. Perhaps not. Love endures far longer than flesh. Ara closed her eyes. And if I refuse, then the curse will consume the kingdom. And when it is sated, it will turn its attention to the stars. She turned away, her heart pounding with a frantic rhythm. The air felt impossibly thin, unnervingly sharp. Why me? She whispered. Why must the burden always fall to me? The witch's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Because you are not the curse itself, Ara. You are its resolution. The moon chose you to dismantle what pride initiated. Ara opened her eyes, gazing into the reflection in the water. His reflection, trembling under the curse's oppressive weight. Her fingers brushed the surface, and for a fleeting moment she felt his heartbeat against her skin. He is suffering, she whispered. The witch nodded. As are you. The bond sustains your lives, but love will determine which of you endures. She swallowed hard. Tell me what I must do. The witch drew a knife from her belt, its blade as black as the deepest night. To embrace another's suffering, you must first surrender your own. Bleed freely. Speak his name, and the curse shall be answered. Ara's hand trembled as she accepted the blade, and if it claims too much, the witch's smile was tinged with sorrow. Then you will become the phantom that walks beside every sovereign, the one who bears suffering so the throne may endure. The rite commenced with the first light of day. Ara stood within the circle of salt. The witch's incantations resonated through the woodland, ancient pronouncements that warped the very air surrounding them. Ara pressed the blade to her palm and uttered his name. The connection ignited. Silver luminescence streamed from her wrist, winding its way through the trees. She gasped as visions surged through her. His inaugural skirmish, the demise of his sire, every hurt, every instance of betrayal. Each etched itself into her flesh, unseen, yet undeniably present. Anguish engulfed her, not sharp, but unending. Fire crept beneath her skin. Blood flowed down her arm, saturating the soil. The witch's voice receded. Do not resist. Absorb it all. Ara's knees faltered. Her breaths grew ragged. She saw him once more, the monarch, striving to remain upright in the royal chamber, clutching his chest. Their connection shimmered between them like a faltering thread. Absorb it all, she told herself. If he must persist, let it be through my being. When the ultimate injury struck, a blade through her heart that was not her own, she cried out, and the forest echoed her lament. Then silence descended. She awakened at twilight. The witch knelt beside her, applying a damp cloth to her brow. It is complete. Ara's body shuddered with depletion. Every part of her ached. Scars that were not hers seared beneath her skin. Yet the bond was quiescent, still alive, but no longer tempestuous. "He is alive," she rasped. The witch nodded. "The curse slumbers, for now." Ara attempted to rise, but her strength failed. The witch grasped her arm. "Rest, child. You have borne the weight of a kingdom's sorrows. The moon shall recognize your name this night." Ara's eyes welled with tears. "It is not concluded, is it?" "Nay," the witch stated softly. "Love never ceases. It merely alters its form." Ara looked toward the darkened horizon, where lightning faintly flickered above the royal residence. Her heart, his heart, still pulsed within her chest, fainter now, yet living. She whispered into the fading illumination, her voice trembling. "Then I shall sustain him until I fracture." The forest breeze rose, carrying her words to the mountains, to the seat of power, to the man who would awaken to find his agony vanished, and her absence burning in its stead. The royal seat no longer resembled the place she had departed. Its marble steps were fractured. The ensigns were ablaze, the wolves scattered. The silver orb that once crowned the city now resided behind clouds, dim and sickly. Only the torches lining the walls still burned, flickering like dying celestial bodies, defiant against the encroaching gloom. Ara ascended the protracted stairway, her respiration shallow, each step heavier than the last. Her physique was a panorama of torment, marked by wounds that had never been hers. Every inhalation reminded her of what she had absorbed from him. Every pulse was both his and her own. Upon reaching the grand portals, the sentinels did not impede her. They merely inclined their heads and permitted her passage. Within, the chamber of the sovereign lay in desolation. The sovereign sat slumped upon his throne, his diadem cast aside. He appeared more gaunt, shadows beneath his eyes, his complexion as pale as ash. The firelight illuminated the contour of his jaw, the tremor in his hands as he clutched the armrest. For an instant he did not perceive her. He gazed into the distance, murmuring to apparitions. "Your Majesty?" she spoke softly. His head jerked up, a fleeting moment of disbelief, then agony. "Ella," he attempted to rise, but the exertion overcame him. He collapsed onto one knee, gasping. She rushed forward, preventing him from succumbing further. His frame was frigid, quivering. "You ought not to be here," he breathed. "It is not secure." "The curse persists in feeding," she countered, "because you keep it extant, because you refuse to relinquish your hold." He emitted a weak, hollow laugh. "You believe I possess the volition to dictate what I am? What we are? I do not believe," she whispered. "I know." She assisted him back to the throne, but he waved her away. "No, I require not your commiseration." "You do not receive my commiseration," she stated. "You receive my suffering." He blinked at her, bewildered, until she lifted her sleeve. The marks beneath her skin faintly shimmered. Faint vestiges of golden illumination coursed through them like channels of molten metal. "I encountered the sorceress," she explained. "I absorbed that which you bore. Every wound, every drop of your lifeblood, every transgression." His countenance fractured. "Disbelief, fury, despair. You imbecile." "You had already enacted the same for me," she replied quietly. "You were merely unaware." He gripped the arm of the throne, his knuckles stark white. "This burden was not intended for your shoulders. You shall perish. Then I shall perish with the knowledge that I imparted meaning to it." "Alara," she advanced closer. "You once desired my protection. Now, permit me to shield you." The torches crackled. Their flames leaned toward her as if drawn by her will. As she extended her hand, he attempted to restrain her, but his vitality had ebbed. Her hand met his chest, the locus where the curse still seared beneath his skin. The instant her fingers made contact with flesh, the bond surged to life. A torrent of radiance erupted between them, gold and crimson and white. The atmosphere vibrated. Her physique convulsed as his suffering ripped through her like a tempest. Every wound, every recollection, she comprehended it all. The day he claimed the regalia, blood still damp upon his hands. The engagement that claimed his sibling. The visages of the innocents he had condemned in the name of prescience. The countless nights he had endured in solitude. hearkening to the howls of wolves that no longer heeded him. And beneath it all, her appellation whispered incessantly. "Alara," she gasped, tears cascading as she held on. "You bore this solitary for an excessive duration. Cease," he implored, his voice quaking. "You will extinguish yourself, and then we shall perish in concert." "Nay," he growled, seizing her wrist, "not in this manner." Yet she did not desist. The bond flared with increased intensity, light spilling into the fissures of the walls, through the ceiling, into the night. The palace itself appeared to draw breath with them, ancient masonry, recalling the vernacular of devotion. She could discern his heart rate decelerating beneath her palm. He was diminishing, not from the malediction, but from surrender. He was permitting her to assume it. "Alara," he articulated, his voice low, shattered. "Heed me. My vision is obscured. I am unable. Yes, you are capable." He cupped her countenance in both hands, his touch unsteady. "You have accomplished sufficiently." "Not yet." He offered a faint smile, ever so obstinate. The bond burned more fiercely. He inclined his head until their foreheads touched, his breath mingling with hers. "Do you recall my pronouncement to you?" She shook her head weakly. His lips brushed her ear, his voice rough as gravel, yet soft as supplication. "You shall absorb every iota until you are incapable of ambulation." The words that had once conveyed domination now felt like capitulation, a confession, a pledge. Her respiration caught. "Then permit me to traverse for both of us." The final vestiges of the malediction shattered like glass. Radiance burst forth from the royal chamber, cascading through every aperture, bathing the metropolis in brilliance. Wolves in the thoroughfares froze mid-howl as the pallor of sickness receded from their ichor. The clouds rent asunder, revealing an unclouded sky for the initial epoch in years. Within, Ara collapsed against him. The marks etched upon her arms glowed anew, then receded. The bond fell silent. He was liberated. As the effulgence waned, the monarch lay slumped upon his throne, his respiration shallow yet steady. All knelt before him, her vision intermittently failing. "Why?" he murmured. "Why would you undertake this for my sake?" "Because you never solicited it of me," she articulated softly. "You merely persisted in survival, and at some juncture, so did I." He caressed her cheek, his thumb tracing the solitary tear that descended. "You ought not to have returned. You would not have forgiven me had I not." He uttered a feeble chuckle that devolved into a cough. "You invariably prevail in our discourse," she offered a faint smile. "Perhaps that is the function of queens." Silence stretched between them. The atmosphere carried the aroma of combustion and precipitation. He reached for her hand, interlacing his digits with hers. The bond no longer seared. It pulsed faintly, slow and gentle, akin to the resonance of a heartbeat. Is it vanquished? The malediction? She nodded with measured deliberation. "Yes, yet the bond will never be benevolent," he responded softly. "Then I shall still discover you upon my awakening." She reclined against his chest, attuned to the rhythm beneath her ear. Potent now, stable. The identical beat that had once haunted her was now her lullaby. For the initial occasion since the conflict, she permitted herself repose. The torches burned low. Outside, the dawn emerged, soft gold spilling across the devastated marble. The wolves congregated below the balcony, their howls not of lament, but of veneration. The sound traversed the mountains, heralding the resurgence of their sovereign and the sacrifice of their queen. When he stirred anew, he found her slumbering at his feet, her head resting against his knee, the subtlest smile gracing her lips. The scars that had once inflamed her integument were now pallid, akin to faded ink. He gently touched her hair, his throat constricting. "You accomplished it," he whispered. The morning illumination caught his diadem, bent, battered, half submerged in detritus. He lifted it once more, placing it beside her. "Then let this diadem rest with you, Alara, for every increment you absorbed, for every stride you carried us forth." He lowered his head, imprinting his lips upon her forehead, and somewhere deep within the bond, faint but sentient, he perceived her voice for the final occasion. I assured you I would not flee. The dawn broke in hushed stillness. No trumpets, no chimes, merely the silent hum of a world holding its breath. The affliction that had overshadowed the realm for years had dissipated. The silvery haze had cleared, leaving a sky the hue of optimism. Yet within the chamber of the sovereign there was no festivity, only immobility. The alpha monarch lay inert at the base of the dais, his crown fallen beside him. The luminescence that had once blazed in his eyes, golden, fierce, eternal, had faded into nothingness. Ara knelt beside him, her palms pressed to his chest, her heart hammering against the silence. No, she whispered. No, not in this manner. Her tears descended upon his skin, warm against the chill that permeated him. The bond was silent, not severed, but vacant, akin to a melody bereft of its voice. You vowed, she articulated. You stated you would find me upon my awakening. The torches sputtered. The wind outside wailed through the open portals, carrying the cries of wolves. One by one, they congregated below the balcony, thousands of them, prostrate. Their alpha had departed. Ara's throat ached. Please, she pressed her forehead to his, her tears tracing the scars she had absorbed from him. If any benevolence remains in this world, let it be this. And then, for the initial occasion, she prayed, not to deities or moons, but to the bond itself. Light stirred beneath her hands. At first she surmised it was her imagination, a flicker, a deception wrought by the rising sun. But then it intensified, pulsing faintly beneath his skin. The bond, attenuated and golden, awakening like an ember beneath embers. Alara, the voice was not sound, but breath, feeble, fragile, familiar. Her heart lurched. I am present. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, the subtlest hint of illumination returning to their depths. You persevered. She laughed amidst tears. You appear astonished. He smiled. Faint, fractured, exquisite. I presumed I had lost you. You had, she whispered, but you rediscovered me. The golden radiance between them flared more brightly, creeping along their wrists, the bond reforging itself. Not as a manacle this time, but as a filament, soft and equitable. The sovereign stirred, drawing a shallow respiration. It is dissimilar, he murmured. The bond, it does not incinerate. Ara nodded, her voice trembling, because it is no longer dominion, it is volition. He reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. The light pulsed anew, 2 cardiac rhythms now distinct yet synchronized. Outside, the wolves raised their heads toward the heavens, howling as the sun pierced the clouds. But it was not solar illumination that touched them. It was silver. The moon, pale and new, hung faintly in the daylight, akin to a pledge renewed. The prophecy had foretold a demise that would conclude the Alpha lineage. It had never specified whose demise. The sovereign had succumbed. The Alpha within him, the curse, the prophecy, the beast, was gone. In its stead stood something novel. He rose unsteadily, supported by Ara. The torches flared as if in acknowledgement. The air smelled of rain and earth. Rebirth. He surveyed the devastated hall, the fractured marble and torn banners. This dominion, he stated quietly, has subsisted on apprehension for an excessive duration. Ara touched his arm, then terminated, not as Alpha, as sovereign. He turned to her, scrutinizing her countenance. The maiden who had once entered his court in trepidation now stood unbowed beside him, scarred, resplendent, eternal. He clasped her hand, raising it high as the wolves below observed. Your queen vanquished the curse, he proclaimed, his voice carried by the wind, not through might or prophecy, but through renunciation. The wolves bowed lower. Some wept, some howled. All comprehended. As night descended once more, the palace was tranquil. The moon ascended in its fullness, soft illumination spilling through the grand casements. The sovereign stood at the identical altar where they had once been cursed. The sword he had employed in the pact of blood lay before him, its edge blunted. Ara joined him, her mantle brushing the stone floor. "You ought to repose," she articulated gently. "I have," he murmured, "for an excessively protracted epoch." She frowned. "What are you undertaking?" He gazed upward at the moon, releasing my hold. He took her hand and placed it over his heart. This malediction, it is not meant to govern any longer. It belongs to the moon once more, and to you." "Nay," she responded swiftly, shaking her head. "We shall rebuild in unison." He smiled, not the smirk of a monarch, but the placid warmth of a man who had finally found solace. "You already have. Observe outward." She turned. In the courtyard below, life had returned. The rivers glimmered silver, the trees no longer blackened. Wolves roamed unfettered by madness. The populace ignited fires not for conflict but for illumination. Her throat tightened. "You reinstated their world." "We did," he stated softly. When she looked back, tears obscured her vision. "Remain with me." "I shall," he whispered, "but not as Alpha, not as monarch, as that which I was perpetually destined to be, a man who selected you." He leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. The bond shimmered faintly, no longer incandescent, merely warmth, steady and human. Every increment, he articulated quietly, the echo of his initial words to her, now reimagined. Gentle, reverent, until you are unable to ambulate. She smiled through her tears. "Then I shall crawl back to you." He kissed her, not with passion, not with suffering, but with tranquility. And as their lips met, a wave of illumination rippled through the chamber, silver and gold intertwining, fading into nothingness. When it was gone, the throne was vacant. The sword lay where it had rested, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. All fell to her knees, their hands trembling. But there was no affliction this time, only quietude. The bond pulsed anew, soft as a cardiac rhythm in the distance. He was gone, yet not lost. The prophecy had not deceived. The Alpha monarch had fallen. But from his descent arose something no curse could obliterate: choice. Days hence, the kingdom inaugurated its new sovereign beneath the identical firmament. Ara stood before her populace, not in mourning, but in fortitude. The wolves knelt willingly, not in apprehension, but in respect. She wore no torque, no coronet, merely a solitary band of silver at her wrist, the final vestige of their connection. When the breeze shifted, she perceived it, a warmth brushing her cheek, a whisper perceptible only to her. "I discovered you." She smiled, lifting her gaze toward the moon. "And I permitted you." The night responded with silence, soft and complete. She turned toward the throng below, her voice steady. "This kingdom shall not exist in servitude again. From this night onward, no wolf, no human, no soul shall prostrate themselves unwillingly. We ascend in unison." The wolves howled their assent. The sound reverberated over the mountains, rolling like thunder, not of lamentation this time, but of resurgence. Later, as the moon reached its zenith, she traversed the garden alone. The flora that had withered now glowed faintly beneath the silver luminescence. She paused beside the ancient fountain, kneeling. In the water's reflection, she beheld not herself, but him, smiling, whole, eternal. Her digits brushed the surface, rippling the image. "You shall forever be a part of me," she whispered. "Always." The breeze stirred her tresses. The water shimmered, and for a fleeting moment she perceived him there beside her, not as a phantom, but as memory rendered tangible. A gentle smile, familiar from moments of playful defiance, graced his lips. "You were correct," she murmured, her voice a soft whisper. "Your reign wasn't destined to be eternal." He echoed her sentiment, "Nor was yours." Yet together we redefined what eternity could signify. Her fingertips grazed the cool stone of the fountain's lip. "Do you grant me absolution for preserving myself?" "Always," he affirmed. A solitary tear traced a path down her cheek, yet a smile bloomed. "Then find your repose, my king. I shall continue our journey." The water's reflection dissolved, leaving only the ethereal glow of the moon. Weeks bled into months, and the chronicle of the queen who walked barefoot journeyed beyond the mountain ranges. Devotees journeyed from distant realms, some seeking miraculous interventions, others yearning for forgiveness. All departed with a singular narrative, the queen of the wolves, bearing the indelible marks of her king, the healer who transformed a curse into the realm's salvation. They spoke of her governance, her hands etched with compassion, her heart too human for the austerity of a throne. Whispers suggested she conversed with the moon during the nocturnal hours, and it always heeded her call. When tempests threatened the kingdom's boundaries, she would venture to the precipice, her bare feet on the wind-swept stone, her arms outstretched, murmuring to the gales. The lightning, as if in deference to an ancient companion, would halt its descent, bowing its luminous head. On the very anniversary of the curse's dissolution, the entire populace convened beneath the newly erected chapel. The new moon, a celestial emblem of fresh beginnings, ascended high in the inky sky. Ara ascended the sacred dais, the very spot where she and the king had once pledged their fated vows. Her people observed in hushed silence as she ignited a solitary torch and began to speak. "This kingdom was not preserved through might," she declared, her voice resonating through the nocturnal stillness. "It was salvaged by empathy, by an unwavering love, by hearts that, though fractured, persistently sought each other." She elevated the torch, its flame a beacon. "Cherish this truth eternally. A throne is not forged through subjugation, but through benevolence. Let no edict nor prophecy ever again enslave your spirits." With that, she plunged the torch into the earth. The flames cascaded across the soil, delineating ancient sigils, shimmering with a silvery luminescence before subsiding into glowing embers. A benediction, not a malediction. The assembled multitude knelt, not in subjugation, but in profound reverence. Later that night, Ara traversed the deserted corridors. The moonlight, a gentle companion, illuminated the polished marble floors. At the royal seat, she paused. Her fingers grazed the armrest where his hand had once rested alongside hers. "I have upheld your promise," she uttered softly. "They are liberated now." From beyond the palace walls, the wolves commenced their chorus, not a lamentation, but a melody, a symphony of devotion that echoed through the mountains. She divested herself of her crown and placed it beside his, the two pieces of regalia gleaming in tandem. Then, descending from the dais, she walked barefoot through the open portals, her form silhouetted against the silver luminescence. Those who bore witness to her that night recounted how she seemed to walk directly into the moonlight and vanish. Others maintain they glimpsed her again at the dawn, kneeling amidst the fields, her hands pressed to the earth as if bestowing healing upon the land itself. Yet a unanimous sentiment prevailed. Wherever her footsteps trod, flowers unfurled in her wake. The palace slumbered, bathed in the soft glow of a moon, partially veiled by wispy clouds, casting a golden hue upon the world. A gentle breeze swept through the desolated courtyards, carrying the mingled fragrances of pine and rain, the very essence of a night where the curse had finally met its demise. Within the quiet chamber, once the domain of monarchs, she dreamt, Ara lay ensconced beneath fine linen sheets, her hair fanned out like a halo upon the pillow, her breathing measured and serene. The mark upon her wrist pulsed with a subtle luminescence, no longer silver nor red, but a warm, sunrise gold. Each rhythmic beat shimmered briefly before receding, as if synchronizing with a distant, lingering presence. The door creaked open with a spectral silence. He entered, not as the Alpha King, not as a sovereign defined by command and power, but as a man newly formed from light and memory. The hearth's embers crackled softly, as though stirred by an unseen hand. The air shimmered where he moved, the faintest whisper of silver ash trailing his steps. His form, though solid, possessed a softened essence, a liminal entity caught between worlds, composed half of shadow, half of light. He paused at the bedside, his gaze resting upon her for an extended moment. Her scars gleamed like celestial patterns in the firelight. Her hands, once prone to tremor, now lay at rest upon her chest, devoid of apprehension, unbound. The collar, the emblem of his dominion, was absent. Yet even in its absence, she remained his, and he hers. "You honored your pledge," he breathed, his voice a resonance not through the air, but through their shared bond. She stirred, her lips parting, as if to respond. He knelt beside her. The king who once commanded empires to kneel now bent willingly to the woman who had salvaged them all. For the first time across the span of eternity, he felt an absence of burden. No crown, no curse, no prophecy, only profound peace. "You absorbed every suffering," he whispered, his fingers tracing the faint aura on her wrist, every wound, every fiber. Her breath hitched, a faint but discernible tremor, as if her very soul recognized the cadence of his voice. A soft smile touched his lips. "Now," he continued, "I claim every part of your heart." The golden mark between them flared, momentarily suffusing the chamber with a gentle light, a departure from the searing intensity of ancient magic. The flames in the hearth transformed, shifting from ember to white, then to gold, dancing with an ethereal warmth. He pressed his forehead to hers, their connection rekindling, not as a tether, but as a delicate, enduring thread. Images flickered behind his eyes, her laughter echoing in the marketplace, her bare feet treading through wildflowers, her hands, though scarred, steady in their healing touch, mending where others had wrought destruction. He saw her as she was now, not a sovereign by title, but by inherent choice, not bound by enchantment, but by the power of mercy. "You carried me," he murmured, "through inferno, through conflict, through the very precipice of oblivion." Her eyelids fluttered, her lips forming the ghost of a smile. "And I would do so again," she whispered, her voice more dream than audible sound. A soft laugh escaped him, filled with an almost childlike wonder. "You always find a way to prevail." "Someone must," she replied in slumber, her words a mere breath. He stood, his gaze sweeping across the chamber. The ancient tapestries were restored, the air no longer heavy with sorrow. Upon the wall, their joined banners were displayed, the wolf's head and the healer's circle, finally united. The throne, once a symbol of absolute authority, had been replaced by an open archway leading into the verdant gardens. Beyond it, he could discern the faint luminescence of moonflowers swaying gently in the nocturnal breeze. He moved towards it, glancing back one last time. "I was destined to rule," he stated softly, "but you were meant to heal. Even me." At the threshold, he paused. Their bond pulsed one final time, a heartbeat not his own. He turned to her and whispered, "When the world forgets my name, they will still remember yours." Outside, the moon emerged from behind the clouds, its silver light cascading over the garden. The flowers tilted their faces upward, imbibing its radiance. The air shimmered faintly, a gentle exhalation, a silent promise. Within the chamber behind him, Ara stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, catching the lingering light at the doorway. For a single heartbeat, she saw him standing at the intersection of shadow and moonlight, a smile gracing his features. "Is it real?" she breathed. He offered no verbal response, but the golden aura on her wrist pulsed in affirmation. Tears welled in her eyes. "Then remain." He inclined his head gently. "I never truly departed." She reached out towards him. Her fingertips grazed the emptiness where he stood, and for a fleeting instant, a palpable warmth filled her hand, real and alive. Then he was gone. The room settled back into stillness. Ara sat in quiet contemplation, her heart steady, her soul no longer burdened by ache. The bond hummed softly, a low, contented resonance, complete. She rose, drawing her shawl around her shoulders, and walked barefoot to the balcony. The city below twinkled with torchlight and the sounds of revelry. Her people still celebrated their hard-won freedom. their voices ascending into the night like fervent prayers. She looked up at the moon, no longer the hue of crimson, no longer cursed. "Rest peacefully, my king," she whispered. "I shall continue our path." And from a realm far beyond the veil of the living, his voice returned, not as a clamor, but as a quiet, reassuring presence. "And I shall continue to watch." The wind rustled her hair. The golden luminescence at her wrist flared once more, then settled, harmonizing with her pulse. The fire in the hearth crackled anew, burning with a low, comforting warmth. The chronicles of the ensuing years spoke of the queen who never remarried, who governed with patience rather than decree, and whose passage through the fields at dawn caused the flowers to bow towards her shadow. And on certain nights, when the world grew silent and the moon hung like a golden orb in the heavens, the people swore they glimpsed a figure beside her, tall, cloaked in silver luminescence, his hand brushing hers as they traversed the tranquil pathways of eternity. Whether phantom, deity, or memory, its true nature remained elusive. Yet for those who held faith, it served as irrefutable testament that love, even when seared by fire, never truly perishes. It simply transforms its form.